The main news now, and take a look at what's happening in the weather world with some serious problems in Bolivia. Kevin, what's
Absolutely. This has been going on for 2 months. We have seen some extreme flooding. We have some new video that has just come in today from Bolivia. Let's take a look at that. We are looking at over 7,000 people being affected now. This is some amateur video. As you can see, houses are being wiped out into the rivers. We're also looking at roads crumbling next towards the rivers as well. That's also hampering those relief and recovering efforts. So let me show you what's going to be happening over the next couple of days. Let me take you where we are actually focusing on right now in Bolivia. Now, the clouds over the next couple of days finally are going to break in this area, but we're talking about a situation that has been going on for the last 2 months. Here's La Paz. You can see right here a little bit of a break in the rains, but you can see the very heavy rain showers. We are talking about the rainy season right now, and this has been going on for 2 months. So what we can expect to see over the next couple of days, a little bit of a break, but this is not going to really bring that flooding level down at any time soon. Over towards the States, I want to take you and show you some a pretty unusual situation that's happening now in parts of California. There's an area of low pressure that has moved down, and believe it or not, over the next day or so, we're actually going to see snow in the Los Angeles area. That is how cold it's going to be, and the high temperature, only about 12 degrees. Now, that snow is going to go down across the Mexican border. The temperatures overnight are going to be quite low. Over towards the east, we are looking at some very heavy rain showers, anywhere from Dallas all the way up to Washington. Those temperatures down towards the south are going to be quite nice. We are looking at about 28 degrees for Miami. And also, let's take a look at what's happening across, there we go, for parts of China and Japan. We are looking at some very nice conditions now, but over towards parts of China, very heavy snow. That's actually going to be some good news for the drought.
Well, there's plenty more still to come on this news hour, including the latest on Ireland's elections, where the early indications are there's bad news for the ruling party.
And I'm Andrew Thomas in Christchurch, New Zealand, with the momentous clean-up task this city, post-quake, now faces.
The first Green Building Solutions Conference and Exhibition, Doha 2011. The perfect platform to explore green products, services and ideas. Don't miss this opportunity to attend. Come and join us.
Two generations face the past in order to understand the present. A young man embarks on a journey with his father in search of answers. Great changes in China have brought their traditional family way of life to a crisis point. Faces of China, at this time on Al Jazeera.
See the world from every angle and every side. Al Jazeera.
Hello again. A reminder of our top stories here on Al Jazeera. Gunmen have attacked Iraq's largest oil refinery, leaving 2 oil workers dead. The attack will also leave the plant out of action for several weeks, affecting local supplies of gasoline and heating oil. Libya's former interior minister has told Al Jazeera Tripoli is the only major city that remains under Muammar Gaddafi's control. The Libyan leader made another defiant address in Tripoli on Friday night, vowing he will not step down. Meanwhile, the US has imposed sanctions on Libya's government, and the UN Security Council is meeting again on Saturday to follow up on its draft resolution calling for sanctions. Now, the ongoing protests in Libya mean the picture on the ground is changing rapidly. Tripoli does appear to be the last major city that is still in the hands of Gaddafi. On Friday, he appeared in Tripoli, vowing to crush any enemy. He was addressing a crowd of his supporters in Green Square in Tripoli. But other residents say parts of the capital city are already beyond Gaddafi's control. Now, as many as 7 people were killed after security forces fired on protesters in some of the capital's districts through Friday night. Well, evacuations are continuing from the capital's ferry port. There are reports that thousands of foreigners have been also queuing outside of the airport, trying to make their way out of the country. And other key places, such as Gaddafi's compound at Bab al-Aziza, are said to be heavily fortified. Meanwhile, on the Libyan border with Tunisia, Nazanin Moshiri has been keeping an eye on the activities there. She's at Ras Ajdir, which is, Nazanin, close to one of the key areas, which is Zawiya, where we're hearing a lot of activity is taking place. What have you been seeing where you are, and what have you been hearing?
What we're trying to do here is paint a picture of what is going on just a few hundred meters away from us in Libyan soil on the western side of Libya. Now, we've been speaking to Egyptians who've been coming across, very few Libyans so far, but mainly Egyptians, thousands of them. We've been speaking to them, and some of them came from Tripoli. Many of them tell us that they spent days in hiding in Tripoli, afraid for their lives because Egyptians are being targeted, they say, by pro-Gaddafi forces. Now, they finally made it out, and on the way, they say that the main checkpoints, 15 or 20 or so of them along the road to where we are now, are very much still in the control of pro-Gaddafi forces. Now, they wanted to tell us about the mistreatment, the fact that their money was taken and their mobile phones and any memory cards. The picture we're gaining from them is that the strategic areas on this border and on the road to Tripoli are still very much under the control of those loyal to Gaddafi. Now, we have spoken to other people who have told us the key towns like Zawiya, like Zuera, and other towns like those are in the hands of anti-government forces. Some of these people have weaponry, some of these people have tanks, they have rifles, but the main weaponry, the main arms and the military are still in the hands of the Gaddafi forces. So what we are fearing, what people here are saying, is that they believe that at some point there may be clashes when these military or these army and militia try to regain these towns. And that's what they're preparing themselves for, with military committees within the towns, organizing themselves into shifts, trying to set up their own checkpoints around the towns, manned by themselves, because they fear that eventually the military will try to attack them.
All right, Nazanin Moshiri in Ras Ajdir, thank you. Now, the calls for political reform haven't been confined to the Arab world. Al Jazeera has obtained some rare footage of one demonstration in Vietnam, a country where political dissent is usually swiftly put down. Steve Chow brings you this exclusive report.
Filmed from a moving car, it is difficult to see the protesters amongst the traffic, but there they are. About 100 farmers from across Vietnam holding silent vigil in the country's largest city. In what is a tightly controlled nation, this is considered a bold step. Photos show the faces of determination. Their posters criticize authorities for illegally seizing their land. Others demand their basic rights and freedoms.
We've seen an increasing number of protests taking place in Vietnam, in part because people are becoming more brave, they've got better information. They're connected now by the internet, so they're learning about protests and what's taking place.
As uprisings spread through the Arab world, it has emboldened those in Vietnam to stand up to their government. But unlike elsewhere, human rights groups fear they won't get very far. At the latest Congress in January, the country's leaders vowed to further strengthen their grip on power. The Communist Party has ruled pretty well unchallenged for more than 35 years.
In the recent months, there's been a crackdown in Vietnam where the government has arrested bloggers and writers for their peaceful expression. At the same time, members of political parties, including Việt Tân, have been arrested solely for organizing. And that's the climate we see in Vietnam of activists arrested and being sentenced to very long jail terms.
And in many cases, tortured and beaten. Witnesses say as police moved in to quash this demonstration, at least one man was struck repeatedly. All were taken in for questioning.
We've made several attempts to contact Vietnam's foreign ministry about the protests, but our calls have so far gone unanswered. Inside Vietnam, activists tell us that more people than ever are willing to publicly express their dissatisfaction. But in a country where political dissent is not tolerated, no one is willing to say how far future demonstrations will go. Steve Chow, Al Jazeera.
Now in Ireland, the counting has begun after the general elections, and the opinion polls suggest that the main ruling party, Fianna Fáil, is heading for its worst ever defeat. After 14 years in power, voters seem to be blaming the party for mishandling the economic crisis. Fianna Fáil has led the government through Ireland's boom years, which ended with a joint EU-IMF bailout. Meanwhile, the opposition, Fine Gael, has said they will try to renegotiate the terms of Ireland's debt. Let's go live to Dublin. Rory Challens is there for us. Rory, the counting only just getting underway, but it does seem as if we formed a general idea of where this is going.
Yeah, the counting began about an hour and a half ago here in central Dublin. You can probably see it going on over my shoulder here. The first exit poll was released at about 8 o'clock GMT this morning, and that is pointing to, it's predicting Fianna Fáil's worst ever election result. About 15.1% of the vote it's predicted to get. So the incumbent is really not doing very well here at all. Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil's arch rival, is expected to head up the next government. It's predicted to get about 36.1% of the vote. Crucially, that's not quite enough to form an outright majority, so some sort of coalition is expected, either with independents or with the Labour Party. Now, I'm joined by an independent candidate here, Richard Boyd Barrett from the group People Before Profit. Richard, how are you expecting yourself to do here?
Well, I think the early tallies would suggest that in the Dún Laoghaire constituency where I'm standing, that I will be in contention for a seat. It may come down to some of the later counts to finally decide that, but certainly I'm in strong contention. Elsewhere, the People Before Profit Alliance is contending for a number of seats, and we're also part of a wider left alliance where we've run 20 candidates across the country, and we believe we're in strong contention for 7 or 8 seats, which would be a tremendous breakthrough for the radical left.
Now, Fianna Fáil looking like they're going to get an absolute hammering here. Why do you think that is?
Well, Fianna Fáil have presided over the most serious economic crisis since the foundation of the state. The vast majority of people in this country feel, and I think rightly so, that Fianna Fáil promoted the interests of bankers, developers and speculators that led to the current economic crisis. And people were even further angered by the fact that those politicians are Fianna Fáil are refusing to acknowledge their culpability for this crisis, and many of the senior figures have run literally